Good morning to you once more, Lagos. You're tuned listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. It's 7:31, which means it's time to jump into the world of newspaper analysis inside of Freshly Pressed for a little bit of, for a good half hour. And joining Valentine and myself in the studio to do that, we've got our lovely ladies of a Thursday. Miss Ireti Bakare-Yusuf is in the studio. Good morning, Miss Ireti.
Morning.
Fantastic, fantastic. Great to have
you
you
here. Let the
rain
out.
It's so nice. Showers of blessings. Refreshing. And we have Funmi Odude in the studio as well. Good morning, Funmi.
Good morning, Folu.
Excellent. Great to have you both here with us. Exciting stuff. And Lagos, we're sure we've had you with us since we kicked off broadcast this morning at 6 a.m. You can continue chatting with us as usual with our WhatsApp number. That is 0809 4440981. Just send us a message to that number and we can read it out on the airwaves. You can watch us live and also send messages to us a live time by going over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/smooth91FM Lagos, and you can tweet at us. Just add the hashtag freshlypressed91.
Going straight into the stories, we have this first one in from New Telegraph. The headline: National Assembly passes 9.12 trillion naira 2018 budget or 2018 budget, pegs oil at $51 per barrel. And in this story, after 6 months, both chambers of the National Assembly yesterday passed the sum of 9.12 trillion naira as the total budget figure for the 2018 fiscal year, which is 508 billion naira higher than the 8.612 trillion that was initially proposed by the executive arm. So they collaborated with the Senate and the House of Assembly, looked at this budget and added some in the areas of power. Ministry of Power actually had an increase of 106.5 billion. Health had 57.5 billion. Healthcare, interestingly, got 1% of the budget, the 2018. And then we recall that this was delayed to this point because the ministries, departments, and agencies could not submit their proposals until February this year. What's your take for me?
Well, first and foremost, if I had a scenario, we will all go hallelujah,
hallelujah, hallelujah,
exactly.
hallelujah.
Finally, towards the end of the 5th month of the year, we're going to pass.
Finally.
Maybe in about 2-3 months.
We might start spending it in the next generation.
The money
right?
will begin to spread. Yes, but so finally the National Assembly has passed our budget. Some key highlights. First and foremost, let's go to the details of the budget. So the highest capital allocation, the total budget is 2.873 trillion naira, and the highest allocation goes to the infrastructural projects in power, works and housing and transportation. Then with the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing getting the highest allocation of 682 billion, followed by transportation 251 billion, followed by defense 157 billion, followed by agriculture and rural development 149 billion, followed by water resources, education, and then special intervention program. They always say that the best way to highlight the priorities of an administration is not really what they say, but when you look at their budget, you'll be able to really highlight their priorities. Infrastructure has been a major priority for this administration. Infrastructure has gotten a huge chunk of the budget, particularly with the rail and transportation projects that are ongoing. So yes, this a bit reflects that. I'm a bit worried though, because when we it's something that has come up a lot even before the visit of Bill Gates about do our budgets really does it really speak about, so the administrations that we've had in this country, there's been a debate on what should we focus on, the people or infrastructure. And of course, when you're talking about the people, we're looking at security, we're looking at health, and we're looking at education. So I like the fact that yes, the Senate President has said that 1% of the total allocation of the budget has gone to healthcare.
Yeah, but in what way are they going to spend it is the question. Go to healthcare.
That we will now deal with. That's now dealing with the executive, dealing with when the money gets the arm of government, we now begin to probe how you use it. But so even at the point of, this is the beginning point, the point of let's allocate the money to those different areas. Education, I still think, is not getting enough.
No.
Of is absolutely what it's getting is abysmal, and you have our education system is falling rapidly, and that is one area we need to look at in our budget. Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of these infrastructural projects, really, we've asked the question before. So we build great roads, so we build good transportation system. What's the point if the people are dying because of simple colds, common colds and malaria? What's the point if our people are not getting adequate education? We're building it for expatriates that are going to come in and at the end of the day run our country for us.
But these roads, if infrastructure you're talking about, we use it. It's the citizens.
We use it. It's a system of everything is necessary. It's about priority. Nobody is saying infrastructure is not necessary. We have, it's like you have so many problems right now. What do you deal with first?
And education is the basis of everything.
It's about the priority.
And I think even the UN advises, is it 26% of a budget that needs to be invested?
So they're absolutely
Nigeria has
necessary.
consecutively reduced its spending on education.
In addition to this, though, it might be interesting, or very important for us to note that the increase was due to the anticipated increase in the pump price of crude.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then our excesses go to the excess crude account. So thank God for that. Another area that I think was abysmal is defense.
Yeah.
If you think about the what we've touted that we will do for the different security agencies, and then getting this money. I mean, so all the promises, all the training, all the equipment, were they sound bites?
They've attempted to get this money other ways, and the Senate is very insistent on that not happening. So we'll wait and see how it develops. And just to play devil's advocate in terms of education, I do believe it is important and it is long-term what we need. But unfortunately, our government tends to be quite short-term, and infrastructure shows a lot quicker than the dividends of education.
It makes good newspaper publications.
It looks good. It looks good.
Anyway, let's move forward to New Telegraph next. It says the Pension Transitional Arrangements Directorate, PTAD, had suspended 22,021 pensioners from the payroll following the non-appearance of the pensioners for the verification exercise in 2017. And so out of this, because of this exclusion of these names, over 6 billion naira has been saved annually from the verification process. We've only verified 237,000. They said the ones that weren't verified either had issues with their BVN or did not show up for the verification process. And those exempted were pensioners in the diaspora as well.
Yeah, that worries me, that not showing up. It really worries me, because if you think about the history of how pensioners have been treated in this country, one can't help but think, I wonder if they've died along the way. That's number one. Number two is, has somebody gone to report their death by obtaining a death certificate?
Or maybe they were ill and they could not go.
That's number one. Even more so is, what happens with your pension if you pass on? Because in other climes, in the UK, for instance, your next of kin, etc., etc. What happens here? And it's about, again, we go back to that thing, big data, clean data, collecting true and clean information about each citizen. So I think it's somewhat of a shirking of their responsibility not to actually seek these people out, and I think it's worth that investment, and whatever it takes, at least you'll be able to use it for next time. So that really, really concerns me. We can't take it for granted that 22,000 pensioners just didn't show up to collect their money. That's highly unlikely.
And one would also hope that they could send representatives.
That's what I'm saying. They need to put an effort in, actually put some effort into identifying and finding and locating this 22,000. But I have no doubt they probably won't, because we live in the country that we live in.
They probably will as well.
Also, the question is how many of these pensioners were ghost workers to begin with?
Precisely. Yes. That's a good point as well, Folu. So that's one. And yeah, those abroad now, okay, come on, I'm like a Mrs. somebody, and I'm like 60-something, and my children have moved me abroad, and they haven't paid, and Nigerian government or PTAD hasn't paid my pension for 5 years. Do you really think I remember to send them a letter saying, "Oi, I'm moving back to England, send me my money"?
You might, because it's something you worked for.
You probably won't,
you earned
because we have heard of pensioners dying in line Okay, and when you become exhausted, that's what happens. When a process that's supposed to work doesn't work, and instead the procedure begins to exhaust and frustrate you, the chances are you become resigned and you just move on. Because guess what? At the age of 75, life is really too short. It actually becomes too short. But anyway, they say that the people that have moved abroad, I wonder if they could tell us how many they have. They don't say, actually doesn't say how many of the people that moved abroad. That I doubt again if they're really that in touch of these people. Now with the VBN, again, we're talking about older people. We're talking about people who have not been treated with respect with regards to the money that rightfully belongs to them. Let's put in some footwork and some effort and find them and identify them. I don't think this is good enough.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Next, I'll come to you. This next story, it's from Punch. Lagos acquires machines to construct roads. So, a new move to reposition Ikoyi, areas like Ikoyi, Victoria Island, Ikeja, GRA to be hotspots and really make them more attractive. Lagos State government on Wednesday inaugurated 45 road construction equipment, saying that the urban regeneration of these areas had commenced.
Well, I don't know. Lagos, let's just. I don't know. Let's just say Lagos State is becoming a construction organization, company, whatever it is. Look, I don't have a problem with outsourcing to experts, if you like, people whose job it is to do these things. While Lagos State is actually acquiring this equipment themselves, I don't think I understand. I really don't get it.
Specifically for the agency responsible, the Public Works
Public Works Agency, right. So we've always had a Public Works Agency. What exactly have they been doing, number one? Number two is, I refuse to start getting excited about you buying equipment, because it's not whether you buy the equipment. Well, it's not whether, I don't care. It's not whether you buy the equipment, it's whether you actually use the equipment properly. You can keep saving money.
They can now use it, because if you sublet these contracts to private companies, it could cost you more money.
No, but we've had contractors. Lagos State have contractors that they work with. They also have people who do the work. And I still go back and say to you, for every road that has been done in the current administration, within 3 to 6 months they fall apart. So what is there to get excited about? Where's the money saving?
That's actually what I was going to say. That a problem with having contractors is that it costs you money if you want them to maintain, because we can't afford to hire contractors for maintenance. So perhaps what we're going to see is this equipment being used for the maintenance, which it should have been being done continuously from the time the roads are laid.
Very quickly, if you're talking about maintenance, fair enough, but you can only talk about maintenance on a road that's actually been done, fixed properly. The fact is, and I live on one, every 3 months my road is redone, and the same hole in exactly the same spot. I can almost mark it with an X and bet anybody's money on it and bet somebody's mortgage on it. It will fall apart again. So what are we getting excited? It's good, buy the equipment, just use them.
Let's see them use it. We've got messages coming in. This is in from Chuks Emeka up on our live chat on our YouTube channel. He says, so the budget has been passed. The key thing is to see how this budget is implemented. There you go. Up on WhatsApp as well, Williams from Lekki asks, do those water resources still exist? What are they doing with their allocation? Hey, valid questions. Keep sending in the messages to us on WhatsApp, which is 0809444091, or just tweet at us, use the hashtag freshlypressed981.
Very quickly, go to Vanguard next. Leah Sharibu, negotiations with insurgents tourtous complicated. That's from the federal government. They yesterday declared that it had not abandoned efforts to rescue the abducted Christian Dachi girl, whose birthday was just this Monday, 14th May. And the family celebrated that on her behalf, and they said the government is actually working around the clock, day to day, negotiating to get her released. What's your take on it?
Yeah, so I'm glad that this story is still on the front burner, and I sort of feel like it is because we refuse to let it go, the kind of thing, because she represents so many other girls that are kidnapped. We usually news pick it up when it's a large volume, but almost daily girls are being kidnapped. And so when we refuse to let it go, this is what happens. It's the same. There were a lot of kidnaps before the Chibok girls, but when
this one got the most attention.
Yes, about the Chibok girls. And then the BBOG group was formed. Then we got the international community. So yes, we seem to have played our role as the citizens to keep the government on our toes in respect of this. And so they would have to keep asking questions. If we forget in a few days, we remember on her birthday. We forget in a few days, something else would make us remember. Very artistic people have made emblems that are on people. So things like that. And it's important that for situations like this and for issues like this, we really keep the government on our toes. A lot of us don't know the whole process involved in negotiating with terrorists and all of that.
Exactly.
We could come on air and analyze and talk about, oh, they drove into
And even thinking of all the
town, nothing
families going
happened.
through.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing happened. So really, because we're not directly involved, with negotiations in any form beyond what we read, which is probably all propaganda anyways, it's difficult to really say how honest the government is being in their efforts.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to put a figure in. But if we keep on putting it in their face, then we know that it's an issue that will not be swept under
I
the
hope she
carpet.
gets released really soon.
Thank you very much for that. For me, we've got more messages coming in still on the YouTube live chat. Keels Blastic says, I'm completely with Miss Ireti on the pension thing. Isn't it their money? You saved XYZ amounts, people's money. You better go and find them or their
Go
next of
find
kin. I say to that is, when they're using your own money to find other
Honestly.
people, you will ask
still
them,
complain.
excuse me,
Yeah.
isn't that my money you are using? Up on WhatsApp, Shagu says, for the Lagos road construction, let them remember those of us in Agege Gondo. We've told them now, Shagu, they will remember. And Tunde says, most of the jobs carried out in Lagos State are very shoddy. Examples are the Lagos Abeokuta BRT Express. There is no proper supervision. Let's move on now and talk about how Lagos State Police have said they will prosecute hospitals over the rejection of gunshot victims. We're taking this particular story from Thisday newspaper, but Ms. Ireti, almost all of us have got a horrific story or the other relating to this exactly, how we know people who have either died as a result of not being treated by hospitals because of a gunshot wound, attack by robbers. It doesn't even have to be a gunshot wound. Hospitals are constantly turning people away when they feel that they might die on their doorstep. What's your take on this? And Lagos are putting out an official statement saying the command wishes to inform all medical practitioners in Lagos State that the Act demands that every hospital in Nigeria, whether public or private, shall accept or receive for immediate and adequate treatment with or without police clearance any person with gunshot wounds.
Shock. And it's about time. When I moved to this country, I was shocked to learn that you couldn't go to a hospital if you had been shot. And they wouldn't treat you, or expect them to treat you without a police report. And I'm like, but how do you get a police report when you've been shot? And it's like
It's an emergency situation.
Like, seriously, like
Nobody plans to get shot.
like even if you're the robber, they can at least hold you down and call the police. And it basically turns out that hospitals themselves were actually shirking the responsibility. They didn't want to be the ones calling the police because effectively, if I'm there with a gunshot wound, you can call the police. Let the police speak to me. They will ascertain whether I'm the robber or the victim. You know. So I'm glad this has happened because a gentleman, Adebayo Akinwumi, I mean, Lord rest his soul, who was a gunshot victim, was rejected at Reddington Hospital in Ikeja, and he subsequently died. And this has prompted this revision. But the problem here is compulsory treatment and care of victims of Gunshot Act 2017. You mean we only had an act in 2017 last year? It's disgraceful. I actually think not just Lagos State, federal government, everybody in that National Assembly should be ashamed of themselves.
But Mr. Ireti, here's the thing. All medical practitioners, all doctors at the very least, take an oath. They take an oath to help. There shouldn't have to be an act. I don't know of any other country in the world where there's an act to tell medical doctors that you must treat somebody who comes in with a gunshot wound.
You make a very good point, but therein lies the question. Because what I always say to people is, were the hospitals told not to do this? Or is this something that's come from our military era? From, something must have caused it. I don't think doctors would refuse to treat people.
It came from trying to avoid police trouble.
Yes.
Which is
Yes,
not
and that is
not a good enough reason.
It's not a good enough reason.
So there was
But
never
can I
any
also-
directive that went out there.
No, but also let's point out that we've also noticed, or it's been observed by some people, that hospitals also turn away people who seem like they might be about to die on their doorstep because it affects their ratings. It affects if you have a certain number of mortalities or if it, happen at your doorstep.
Yeah.
So they're more interested almost in the prestige of the hospital and not having to put recorded death on
You know
their
why
tally.
that is? Because we're heavily dependent on private hospitals. We don't have government hospitals because the government still refuse to invest properly in healthcare in Nigeria. That's the long and short of it. Look, if I'm a businessman and I've opened a hospital because of business, there are people, I keep saying, there are people in the business of health. There are people in the business of the arts. They're not necessarily creatives, and neither are they necessarily doctors. It's two very different things. Somebody's got to be at the business point, somebody's got to be at the technical end. That's all there is to it. So the citizens shouldn't have to rely heavily on private hospitals.
That's true. Thank you very much for that, Miss Ireti. We've got very quickly messages coming in still on WhatsApp. Henry says, the budgeted figures for education are oftentimes an inaccurate representation of what the federal government actually spends on education. There's the TED Fund and UBEC and so on, but because of resource constraints, we can only hope for maximum value extraction from the little that we've budgeted, he says. Interesting. RGB says, so we built fantastic infrastructure and the citizens is built for don't have a clue how to keep it going due to poor or worse still lack of education. Education is as important, if not more. Bamidele from Lagos says, Lagos is chop when it comes to contract sourcing. The roads are window shopping. I would vote Ambode out if it were on the roads alone, says Bamidele. Very serious stuff. Speaking of serious things, the court has barred the police, the EFCC and the DSS from searching Wike's home. For me, interesting development. This is tracking all the way from 2017, where Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers had sought the intervention of the court, seeking an order to stop the police, the EFCC and the DSS from obtaining search warrants for his home. Now, this was based on particular provisions of the Constitution, and the court did say that essentially the argument of the police that the EFCC at Wike's residence could be searched without his presence because these is untenable. But over to you. What's your take on this?
So back to the immunity clause. Controversial
immunity. Sitting in office. Makes you want to sing out loud.
Yeah, it does. So the immunity clause basically prevents any civil or criminal proceedings from being taken against the sitting president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor. And it helps in situations like this. Is why the National Assembly seems to be, at least attempting to try and include themselves in the clause. But basically, we have a situation in this country where sometimes as security agencies seem like if we want to go after a person, we'll look for ways to skirt around the issue. We will still go after a person. The judgment basically says the intent and the purpose of the immunity clause, while it was put in the Constitution, is to allegedly prevent distractions from governance. So key people can focus on governance so that they don't have to be distracted by civil suits, criminal suits of any form. So it generally means that if a sitting president, vice president, governor, deputy governor commits any criminal act or is suspected of any criminal act while in office, investigations can proceed, but no criminal proceeding can be taken against him while he is in office. The question now is that of course, criminal proceedings, is it restricted to filing a charge against him in court or doing the side things, for example, searching his home? And that's the delicate balance.
Because searching his home requires his presence ordinarily.
Yes, and it requires proceedings. Yeah. You should apply.
Yes.
Under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, you should be able to place some facts before a magistrate who will say, okay, there's cause for you to search his home. And that is why the court said it will form part of criminal proceedings. And when you look at the intent behind the immunity clause in the first place, you've not filed a charge against them, but you're searching his home. I mean, if we are trying to keep distractions away, this is a clear case of it. So, but it's bound to bring about the opponents of the immunity clause out of their closet again, because there's nothing Nigerians like that than seeing a public official face the wrath of the law.
Let's get him. Okay, but let's move on actually. Up next from the Tribune newspaper, this is in this headline, the FEC okays $995 million loan for the Abuja-Makurdi road, phase 2 of this road. For me, just over to you.
the question is always, how do we pay back this?
Because it's a big
Right?
loan that's to be sourced from China's Exim Bank. I would like to know how many loans we have on average now from China.
Very soon, I'm sure China will own us.
What the rates
No, I want to know
are.
how much of my future has been sold
Yes.
to China. I might have to start speaking Chinese.
Mandarin could be something you must learn.
No,
now.
create a new language called Chinese.
There
Get
you
my
go. But very interesting. For me, any comments as to why we don't really see the rates at which we're being given these loans, what the repayment structure is, because the citizens are going to be paying for this.
We're going to be paying for a really, really, really long time, and the debt profile of states and the country as a whole is alarming. And when you consider the fact that we don't seem to be increasing our revenue, that's even more alarming. So what
our
do we
earnings
use? Yes,
in comparison to the loans that we're taking.
So
Yeah.
part of me thinks that maybe the government believes that, we could get another sum of loan cancellation. But I mean, this is China. China is not like.
Let's flip it a little bit and look at it from another side. What is important, and what we do know is that yes, this administration came in to a country that was broke.
Yes,
all right.
already.
So how do you get yourself out of recession? You spend your way out of it. No. Allow me to. Yeah, but what I'm saying
to
is,
really jumpstart.
to really jumpstart it, you spend your way out of it. That's what they did in the UK. That's what they did in the US, and you continue to do that. And then one of the things that we're doing, that they have been doing, and we must say this: you've got more income coming from agriculture. Right? Correct. Now we've got this thing that's happened with Iran, thank God. Let's hope they don't make up again and oil prices continue. We don't want them to be friends. And oil prices continue to go up. So we are now beginning to get some sort of life, if you like, into our economy. And that's the only way you can pay for the loan, but you can't get away from actually getting a loan. You
All
just
right.
can't get away from it.
Thank you so much.
Sorry
We would
for
love
me.
to keep
Yeah.
debating this, but we must move on. Our final story very quickly. The presidency says the National Assembly is yet to transmit the PIGB to Buhari. So the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, which we've all been waiting to be fully sorted past, whatever needs to be done, let's just get the ball rolling. Well, there's a terse statement that's come out from the Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly matters. It's Senator Itainang, who says, from my inquiries, the bill is still undergoing standard operating legislative processes of the National Assembly preparatory to transmission.
I don't know what language that is.
This is jargon.
Of course it
That's
is.
just
Of
absolute
course it
jargon.
is. Of course it is. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's what it is. Let's go to the real meat of the story. Because I don't know what we're supposed to say to that. You've read it out. Anyone that can translate it, send a text to Smooth FM. Right, the meat of the story. So we go back to this Chinese money again. And not Fashola personally, Power, Works and Housing has been given 995 million out of the loan from China. God, how much? I'm telling you, my children's children will be paying for this forever. But hey, it is what needs to be done. And so what the Ministry of Works has said is they're going to be using it on 268.5 kilometer project consists of 16.0 kilometers of Lafayette bypass and another 251.7 kilometers from 9th Mile through Otukpo to Makurdi. And so Fashola is going to be doing lots of road works. That's really the long and short of it. Let's get excited. More road works. We haven't got the time to go into this story, unfortunately, Lagos, but you'll have to go and read it yourself. But there's really quite a lot of work. Lower Benue River Basin, etc., etc.
Thank you.
Messaging from Ade on WhatsApp. He says, I would never understand why allocation for education isn't the highest. Yet we need infrastructure, but we need to invest in our people because they'll be the ones to manage this infrastructure.
Exactly.
We keep training civil servants with the educational system and expect better. How?
Well, let's see how that
This is
goes.
very good text.
You see
Very
what,
good.
we're saying this, and I'm fully behind this, and everyone knows I'm a big supporter of education. But we're very impatient people, and the reality is, when we start doing the things that need to be done properly, and we are going to we will complain from the high. What are you doing?
Yeah.
We can't see it is a lie. You are not using the money
But
for
the
that.
proof of the pudding isn't it in the eating? So we
Which
see the
will
next
be
generation.
the next generation. But that's
fine.
my argument.
That's fine because
I
the
think
generation
it's fine,
before,
and I agree.
we see what the education
If they
did for
put it
them.
in the news that they've increased teacher salary, I mean,
If we see it in the news that
Some-
JAM
some-
results and university results, etc., the way they do in the UK, A-level
Absolutely.
results are going up
Absolutely.
every year. We start to get proper stats that we
But-
can trust. Come on, we won't complain.
No,
And if we do,
we'll
you can
see
ignore
that.
us.
We'll see that news in like 5, 10, 20 years.
That's it. That's what investment is.
I'm okay for that.
It's not going to help you and I.
Samuel from Lekki meanwhile says the police say all they want, but how many hospitals will hear? By
Yeah.
now, there should be a notice from the Ministry of Health and Police instructing doctors and nurses to treat gunshot patients. There is, perhaps what you mean to say is, by now there should be prosecution for when it doesn't
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are over time right now. I know there are lots of messages coming in. We'll see if we can talk about this some more inside of Lagos Talks 981. But do stay with us because coming up next at 8:15 was
We heard that you could do anything.
actually,